My name is Amelia Carter, and I'm 34 years old. 3 days before Christmas, I came home after a 12-hour hospital shift, and my house key no longer worked. At first, I thought the lock had frozen. I tried again, then again. Nothing. Through the front window, I could see my parents decorating the Christmas tree like it was any ordinary evening. I knocked until my hands hurt. Finally, my father opened the door just wide, enough to throw 2 black garbage bags onto the porch. "You don't live here anymore," he said. Then he shut the door in my face. I stood there in the snow, staring at the bags that held my clothes, my childhood photo albums, and even the blanket my late grandfather had given me. I couldn't understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. The truth was, it had started 2 years earlier when Grandpa William passed away. Before he died, he quietly left me a $75,000 inheritance. It wasn't enough to make anyone rich, but it was enough to help me buy my first home someday. My parents believed that money should belong to the whole family. My father wanted to invest it in a business that had already failed once. My mother kept saying, "Family helps family." Every time I politely refused, they became colder. Phone calls became shorter. Family dinners became uncomfortable. Eventually, they stopped pretending everything was okay. I had been staying with them for only 2 weeks. After my apartment lease ended, while I searched for a new place, I never imagined they'd lock me out just before Christmas. I called my older brother. No answer. My best friend was visiting family in another state. Every hotel nearby was either full or outrageously expensive because of the holidays. With nowhere else to go, I drove through the snowy streets until I noticed a small building with a simple sign that read Hope Haven Shelter. I walked inside carrying nothing but 2 garbage bags and a broken heart. I thought I was entering a shelter for one night. I had no idea I was walking toward the biggest secret my grandfather had spent years protecting. The shelter was quiet. A volunteer handed me a blanket, a hot bowl of soup, and showed me an empty cot near the back wall. I kept telling myself this was temporary. I'd find a place after Christmas. I'd figure everything out somehow. About an hour later, an elderly woman sitting beside me finally spoke. "First Christmas away from home?" she asked gently. I nodded. "My name's Eleanor," she said. "What's yours?" "Amelia. Amelia Carter." The moment she heard my last name, her expression changed. She stared at me for several seconds before whispering, "Your grandfather wasn't William Carter, was he?" My heart skipped a beat. "Yes. How do you know him?" She reached into her old leather handbag with trembling hands and pulled out a small sealed envelope tied with a faded blue ribbon. "I've been waiting almost 12 years to give this to you." I looked at her in complete confusion. "Your grandfather came to see me 6 months before he passed away," she continued. "He volunteered at this shelter every Christmas. He told me if a young woman named Amelia Carter ever walked through these doors with nowhere else to go, I was to hand her this envelope." My hands started shaking. "He knew this would happen?" Eleanor slowly nodded. "He told me he hoped I would never meet you here. But he said if I did, it meant the people closest to you had finally shown you who they really were." Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter. The very first line made my eyes fill with tears. "My dearest Amelia, if you're reading this, your parents finally chose money over you." There was also a small brass key and the business card of a lawyer. At the bottom, Grandpa had written one final sentence. "Tomorrow morning, give him the key. Then everything I protected for you will finally become yours." The next morning, I was standing outside Harper & Cole, attorneys with the old brass key in my pocket, and my grandfather's letter folded inside my coat. I still couldn't believe any of it. Part of me expected the lawyer to tell me there had been some mistake. Instead, Mr. Harper smiled the moment he saw the key. "I've been hoping I'd meet you one day," he said. He unlocked a small safety deposit box hidden inside his office vault. Inside were property papers, investment records, and another handwritten letter from Grandpa William. The lawyer explained that 12 years earlier, my grandfather had quietly purchased a small cottage on Maple Ridge Lane through a private family trust. He never told my parents because he feared they would pressure me into giving it up. Along with the house, he had invested money that had grown over the years to nearly $80,000. I sat there speechless. My grandfather hadn't just left me an inheritance. He had left me a future. As I signed the final documents, Mr. Harper looked at me seriously. "Your grandfather made one request," he said. "He wanted you to promise that no matter what happened, you'd never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting what he built for you." I promised. A week later, I moved into my new home. It wasn't a mansion, but it was warm, peaceful, and finally mine. Then, just as I finished unpacking my last box, my doorbell rang. Standing on my front porch were my parents. And somehow, they already knew everything. I opened the door but didn't invite them inside. My father looked nothing like the man who had thrown my belongings onto the porch 3 weeks earlier. His confidence was gone. My mother forced a smile that disappeared the moment I didn't return it. "Amelia," she began softly, we didn't know your grandfather had left you this house." I looked at both of them for a moment before answering. "No," I said. "You didn't. That's exactly why he kept it a secret." My father stepped forward. "We made mistakes. We're family. Let's start over." For years, those words would have been enough to break my heart. But standing on my own porch, holding the keys my grandfather had trusted me with, I finally understood something. People who truly love you don't throw you away when you stop giving them what they want. I handed my father Grandpa's final letter. He read only the last paragraph before his face turned pale. "If Amelia is reading this after you've abandoned her, then you've already proven why she must never depend on you again. This home is her new beginning. Respect it, and respect her choice if she never opens her door to you again." Neither of them said another word. My father quietly folded the letter, handed it back to me, and walked toward the car. My mother stood there for another few seconds, with tears in her eyes before whispering, "I'm sorry." I simply nodded and closed the door. That spring, I planted white roses in the front garden because they had been my grandfather's favorite. Every Christmas since then, I placed a single candle in the front window, not for the family who locked me out, but for the man who made sure I'd always have a place to come home to. Sometimes people think the greatest inheritance is money. They're wrong. The greatest inheritance is knowing that, even when the people closest to you let you down, someone believed in you enough to protect your future long before you ever needed saving.